Last week, we learned that the role is still the same. There's just a different person in that role when it comes to parenting. We also learned that there is a huge gap that makes grandparent parenting a little bit difficult. So we want to welcome back Michelle Anderson and Pam Meeker Stolz to the Afterword to continue our conversation about grandparents and caregivers raising grandchildren, or nieces or nephews, or others in our family, as we learned on our first episode with Michelle and Pam. So we've got a tough question to start this episode, but I have a feeling that both of you can handle this. You have shown in our first episode that you all are quite versed in what you do and your experience. Pam, I'm going to start with you first. When a grandparent dies, where's the kid's home during young adulthood, and what are some resources that are available for these families to tap into?
If a grandparent dies, and we've had this happen, sometimes another relative will step in. We've had aunties step in. Right now we have a 20-year-old sister that has stepped in to raise her sisters, and the flock of facilitators that she's been around her whole life, because it was her grandparent that was raising her and was in the group, so she knows us, has stepped up to help. Another problem that I don't know if anyone would think about, and we have a special group within our groups, is that there are children that are never going to be able to leave home. Okay, these are our autistic children, our children that have special needs for one way or another. So now you've got those grandparents that are in their 80s, early 90s, and these children are still at home and are never going to be able to leave. So we've got that group that we're helping out too. And that is a unique section inside of a section. There is agencies out there that will help with living and help with bringing in groceries and help with outings for these kids. But that's also a segment of society that no one thinks about. It's actually, we've had one grandparent that when she died, she actually left the child to another grandparent in our group. And that helps. But when these kids have all grown up together, they all kind of take care of each other as they've grown older. So you see that in the 20-year-olds that are in college, where they step up and help each other navigate college, navigate learning to drive, learning all the things that I don't want to say that they would be doing with their parents, but they take on a role of bouncing things off of each other. So I think that's the best I've got on that.
Thank you, Pam. How about you, Michelle? Do you have any resources for those children who are in that situation?
Well, unfortunately, one of the hardest conversations I ever had was when I had a grandparent that called me on the telephone, and they were literally in the process of trying to put together their final paperwork because she had been diagnosed with a terminal illness, and she knew she only had a matter of months to live. And she was leaving her husband behind to have to raise the grandchild. So those grandparents trying to put together those legal documents and things like that, the AAAs can always help and answer questions, refer over to legal services if it's an option in some of those cases, and be able to try to guide and help those grandparents with that. It does open up a whole new host of issues for those children to have to deal with. And where do those children go? And a lot of times those children, if the grandparents survive long enough, those children find themselves in caregiver roles for those grandparents before a lot of times they're even out of college, or even if they are able to go to college. In my mind, the thing that I kind of think You see the most when you see children who spend a large amount of time around the senior population. You have more empathetic children. You have more compassionate children. And even though those children may have some struggles of their own and they may have some emotional baggage of their own, they tend to look at things a little bit differently than sometimes children who are raised in normal households.
I agree. And like Michelle was saying, just in my group alone, and I've got between 20 and 25 people, I've had 3 husbands that have passed. So in that group, they kind of take care of each other. The widows kind of have taken care of each other, and when we get those phone calls that they're in the hospital, this is happening. I mean, we are there every step of the way. We aren't just there for, okay, well, here's your time in your support group. Our agency is 24/7 because emergencies don't happen between 9 and 5 of a big agency. That's the beauty of us being volunteers and having a smaller agency is, at 11 o'clock at night when someone has to go to the hospital, someone can go and pick up a child and bring them into our home to babysit while you go with your husband because he's just had a heart attack. And that's happened. So I can't even tell you how many times that's happened. They'll call another one of the caregivers to come pick up the child. It's just the nature of the population we're dealing with.
Yeah. Well, that's why we wanted to ask that question, because we do think it is very important. And I appreciate the understanding of this, also developing empathy and some of those role reversals and how other children may step up and others in those communities. I want to ask you a quick question, Michelle. You've mentioned it a couple times. What is AAA?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's the Area Agency on Aging. The program that I work with at the Appalachian Council of Governments houses the Appalachian Area Agency on Aging, which is one of the 10 area agencies on aging in the state. And we work under the discretion of the Office on Aging out of Columbia. So,
Gotcha.
My apologies.
Okay. No, it's good. It's all good. I just didn't think that you all were like handing out maps or anything like the regular AAA.
Exactly. Yes, we're not the auto group. We respond a little bit faster than they do.
Oh, there you go. Like that. So let me ask you a little, we're going to just turn our attention to this idea because we've talked about a generational gap. In our first episode, that was one of the common denominators you both agreed to, that pretty much we can see that across the board. But how do we close the gap with some of the other things? And we want to think about maybe, as we have been hearing now, some of our need for diversity when we think about other communities and cultures, whether it's our African American or our Hispanic cultures or others. How can we best support and bridge some of the gaps in diversity with that population? What do you think, Michelle?
I would honestly have to say in a situation like that, again, it's going to be through programs. It's going to be through having events where these people all get together, to where it's not going to matter whether you're Hispanic, whether you're African American or anything. None of that's going to be relevant if you're having some sort of program or if you're having some sort of event or activity, nature-based program, whatever, that is allowing all these people to participate, and everyone's kind of doing the same thing. May you have some, issues where you have language differences. I mean, you would accommodate for that just like you would for anything else. And so with those concepts, to me, being able to do those type things and having these people together is the only way that I know to do that. Personally myself. And this is still uncharted waters here that we're in, because this is something that people don't think about. They don't think about, the seniors that are raising the children. It's not something that is discussed over family dinners. It's just like with, in all honesty, a lot of these grandparents face the same issues that any mom and dad would face. But the problem with it is is everybody looks at it differently because these are seniors that are raising children. A lot of it is the exact same issues. It's just there again, the only difference that is really there is that generational gap. And like I said, I keep referring to it as a gap because I don't really know what else to refer to it as, but it's that difference, that's the only key, because any dad can have a heart attack and leave a mom, without, a partner to raise children. And it's the same thing with the seniors. I have one lady right now that we're helping her with her grandchildren. Her husband suddenly passed in March of this year, and we've been helping her with her grandson. And when I called to her to talk with her right after her husband had passed, I did not know that her husband had been ill. It wasn't something that was expected. And she told me of his passing, and then she also told me that they had acquired another grandchild in February. So she's having to deal with a whole lot of issues, but that could happen to any family. It's not just because they're seniors raising children. The only difference in this and just life in general is that gap.
Right answer. How about you, Pam?
Well, we're fortunate that we have Spanish-speaking facilitators, because sometimes that community may have different cultural ways that I might not understand. So having a facilitator that understands the culture is very helpful. The groups are very large and they feel comfortable. We have African-American facilitators, we have Spanish facilitators, we have white facilitators, we have Jewish facilitators. We have every kind of facilitators that you can think of. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. I think Michelle was saying that they were having problems like going into churches. We've had that issue. Some are more accommodating to us than others. A lot of our meeting places are in communities. Mostly mental health facilities are very welcoming to us, although we have some schools that are welcoming to us. But it's also very hard to find meeting places because you can't just expect everyone to come to you. You have to go out into the different communities. So like, I don't know if you're familiar with Los Angeles, but we're everywhere from Long Beach to Lancaster, which is a very large area. I mean, it would be about a 2.5 hour drive to get from one to the other if there was no traffic. And so we have areas in between, and just even in that area, there's differences in kind of like the culture of being in different areas. So we have a facilitator for every place you're at. We also have someone who is in the court system that will walk you through every aspect of the courts, that is very familiar with the judges, with the attorneys, he has lunch with them and knows them, and they know him, and they know that if he's there with a client, that it's a good thing, that family has the backing of the Alliance of Relative Caregivers. So it helps.
That's a great point to think about, and walking through the court systems and any other systems. And again, just to bridge that gap, as Michelle has used that word really well, in the diversity of every avenue, that is an important thing to highlight. We really appreciate
right that. Because it's not just in the family or the schools. It's everywhere we go.
Well, there's some new challenges presenting themselves now with COVID, and we've talked about some of them. But recently, Amy and I did a podcast with some folks on virtual education, because a lot of schools are not going back in the fall. They're going back part-time, or parents are feeling like they need to supplement what's happening in school with something that's at home. So virtual education is a big deal right now. What do grandparents or seniors who are raising children need to help them navigate the new technology and elements of virtual education during COVID?
Everything. that one is going to be a huge challenge for our seniors, and it's something that I've been trying to really think hard on how to help these seniors with this. I was actually on a phone call this morning with one of them, and she told me the two kids will not be going back to brick and mortar school. They're going to be going to virtual school. And she was asking me, can your agency help out with tutoring? She said, because I cannot teach these kids. I cannot. And as a parent, this lady does not have a large basis of a formal education, so it would be extremely difficult for her. So in order for these children to be able to rise above, and she wants more for these kids, and she knows that, we're going to have to try to help her think outside of the box and try to find, hopefully some of these schools are going to take those things into consideration, and they're going to have teachers that are going to be willing to offer tutoring programs. We have some of the Sylvan learning programs and stuff and everything around here in the area. They're so expensive, and I've heard some of my grandparents tell me that they didn't really feel like that it helps the children. So we're really going to have to try to help these grandparents find some other options for them to be able to get some assistance with these programs, because, and I've even said this before, just in the realm of the senior programs, period. Everything now you see they're wanting to push online. They're wanting to have seniors, do email addresses and all this stuff and everything. And there's just some seniors that refuse to grasp that concept. They don't want to. They have no desire to do it. They're not interested in it. And I have talked with seniors that are in their 90s that they have web addresses and they have emails and they're constantly on the internet. But I've talked to 60-year-olds who, oh, no, I'm not having an email address. I'm not getting on the internet. That's going to be a huge issue for some of these seniors that are trying to raise these kids, and being able to get that information to them. The kids are going to have to teach the seniors how to use the computers. I mean, it's going to be one of those things where those kids are going to be teaching those seniors as much as those seniors are going to be trying to teach those kids. But it's just like with anything else, as far as I'm concerned. There's always someone out there who may know something that I don't know, and I can learn from them and they can learn from me. And that's what this is going to have to be. And we're just going to have to try to come up with programs and try to help these seniors find the resources out there to be able to help these kids with some of these projects and classes that they're going to have, because these seniors, a lot of my seniors are really worried about this. A lot of them.
I can certainly understand that. It's one thing to tutor or to, in a way, homeschool a second grader. It's another thing to try to get through 10th grade math,
Absolutely. And I mean, I myself, thank goodness I don't have any children now that I need to deal with, because like I said in the last podcast, I believe I'm not technologically savvy, if that's even a word. If I spend too much time with the computer, it's probably going to end up smashed at some point, because I get frustrated because, I know how to do the basic stuff, but don't ask me to do a whole lot more than just the basic things. And I'm not even 50. So, I mean, you've got some seniors out there that, they're not going to be able to even do the simplest of things of creating an email address to be able to follow these kids online to make sure that the kids are doing their schoolwork and stuff. So it's going to be difficult for them, and we're just going to have to try to come up with other alternatives. And there again, school programs, the educators, they're going to have to be willing to understand that you cannot force these seniors to do something that are out of their comfort zone. And if you try to make them do stuff where they have to use the internet and things of that nature, they're going to be more apt to just not even do it, period. Which is what we've seen with a lot of our seniors, with being able to try to get them involved in programs and stuff and everything. Years ago, you could basically do applications and everything over the phone. Now they want you to do all this applications through the internet and things like that. So a lot of our seniors don't even try to take advantage of programs that are out there, because they're like, no, I'm not using the internet. I'm not using the computer to do this. I want a live person to talk to. So yeah, it's going to cause some major issues, and there's a lot of people that are concerned and nervous. And technically I'm one of those, even though I don't have any children, but I'm concerned with what my seniors are going to be able to to deal with in regards to this whole new platform of a way a lot of these children are going to have to learn.
Anything from you, Pam, that you can chime in on?
Oh, well, I have a lot because, like Michelle was saying, a lot of my seniors have flip phones still, and they are not ready to do simple things. We have a website, and we keep it as simple as possible, because if they do use a website, it can't be too fancy because they tune out. They don't want anything too much or it's gone. It just is. But one of the things that we're having problems with is there's no Wi-Fi in a lot of these houses. They just don't have Wi-Fi. They can't afford it. If they do have the phones, they have the affordable phones. I forget what it's called, but the free phones that they get with the free limited minutes, but that doesn't include the Wi-Fi. Okay. And then the kids, if they get the Chromebooks from school, those are very slow. Okay. And they buffer for a very long time. And like Michelle said, it's like, I'd be ready to throw that against the wall. It would take me forever. And if a teacher is teaching and it starts buffering, they've missed half the lesson. And then you put 3 or 4 kids in the same house. Well, now you've got a 2-bedroom house. Where are you going to put all those kids so that each one, and they're in different grade levels, have to listen to that teacher and pay attention and not get on each other's nerves and do that? And you're trying to help each one with each thing. And what if the parent's trying to work? Let's say they are technologically savvy. Okay, well, so now you've got mom who's trying to do a Zoom meeting. Like I tried to do this Zoom meeting. It's like, okay, don't ring the doorbell. Nobody better call me. Okay, well, now there's a helicopter over the head. Okay, well, but now don't talk to each other. But mom, I need this and I need that. And somebody's going to walk through and this is going to happen. One of my kids, it's like the littlest one ran through it from the backyard, from the pool, and in her bathing suit. Okay, because she didn't have class that day. So the teacher shut off the class because they said, oh, somebody ran through in their underwear. Well, nobody ran through in their underwear. Okay. Okay. So that, true story. And you're going to have so many things that happen. And it's just frustrating. Right. And who's going to pay for all that?
Now that you've said who's going to pay for that, let's go to our next question, which is, what are some of the scaffolds that could ease the financial challenges? You both talked about having extracurricular activities paid for, going to Yosemite, having a prom day at the park, and going to those type of things. But those are also for the grandchildren, which is important. But what are the scaffolds that could ease the financial challenges that the grandparents feel? What do you think?
There was an excellent program that I've seen at a conference one year, and I'm not even sure who did it, and I would like to be able to find out. So if anyone listening to this knows, please give me a shout out and let me know. But one of the larger corporations had band together to get college students that were taking IT classes to be able to refurbish laptops, teach programs to the seniors so that they would be able to know how to use those programs. There was also another one where internet was being offered to seniors to be able to get them online and to get them connected. If there were more programs like this, that would drastically help these seniors. Through our program, we can help with some things. We could help with internet service. We would not have the funding ability to be able to pay for internet service for an entire year. And in the mind's eye of our program, what we want to be able to do is sustain. So if we paid for half of a year and then the senior could pay for the other half, those type things, but we have to be able to sustain whatever it is that we do. So we need other options for these seniors. We need IT groups who are willing to step in and say, okay, if you are having computer problems at home, reach out, call us. We'll help you with it. We're not going to charge you $100 an hour to tell you that your bandwidth is slow or something of that nature. In the past, telephone companies would do telephone service, with a discount for seniors. We need to look at internet companies to be able to offer these things to seniors at a reduced price because they're raising these children. Those are the things that's going to alleviate some of that pressure from those seniors, because a lot of them, if they have to choose between a medication for themselves and have an internet for their child to be able to learn, they're going to choose that internet every time.
Thank you. How about you, Pam?
Well, what we found is that, especially now during the COVID while the kids are home, the grandparents are having so many more expenses. I mean, normally the kid would be in school during the day for the most part. And you saw this with the run on toilet paper. Great example, okay, is normally they're not home using all that toilet paper, using all those paper towels, making all those messes. They're making those messes at school, and the school's dealing with this, okay? But now we're having to pay for all that. We're having to do all those cleanup. We're having to do all that. Our electric bills are going up tremendously. Our water bills are going up tremendously. I don't know how these kids got along in school with the food that they got in school, because they're eating everybody out of house and home here while they're home. Okay, so there's two ways to get them. There's formal, which is through DCFS, and there's informal, which would be that you got guardianship. Okay?
What is DCFS?
DCFS is Department of Children and Family Services, or it could be called CPS or Child Protective Services. Okay, but that's a formal way when the state has actually taken the child from the parent and given them to them. Okay, and if you get the child that way, then you get funding. Okay, you get the state funding for that child. If the child just gets not brought to your doorstep, you don't get that funding. You get something called TANF, okay? And that's, non-needy caregiver funds, okay? And that pays very little, and that's from the state. And each state varies on what they pay. So California is going to pay probably a lot more than South Carolina, okay? I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure that shoes cost the same amount no matter what state you're in, okay? And I know pants are pretty much universal across Amazon. And so that's a problem too, is that each state decides what they're going to pay to each one. So everything has basically got to be started on a state level and start locally with, you've got to demand or ask, in your own backyard that we need help, okay? Because it's not coming really from a federal level.
Wow. Start in your own backyard. That is a great answer to how to scaffold the financial challenges, because you're right. If I'm going to scaffold something to support someone in my community, it needs to start in my backyard, maybe with voting, maybe with policy changes, maybe with whatever. But wow, excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that and enlightening lots of information. Appreciate that.
For sure. Well, we have one final question that we always like to ask here on the Afterword, and it's this. What's a metaphor to help us understand the experience of seniors raising children? Who wants to go first?
Okay, I will. Okay, from a California girl, okay, born and raised, I'm going to say that I've heard this before a couple of times, and it's kind of a variation, but children are like waves of the ocean, and you never know what you're going to get at any given time. I mean, sometimes they're little ripples and it's fun and wonderful, and next thing you know, it's a sneaker wave and it's going to knock you over, and sometimes you're in a riptide. So that's my metaphor.
I love that. I've been in that riptide before.
That's great.
Love that.
Scary and yet very, very visually accurate. I'm getting the picture in my head perfectly.
What about you, Michelle?
The only thing that can come into my mind, and I'm not even really sure that this would be considered a metaphor, is it's like a roller coaster. It can be exciting, it can be fun, it's terrifying, it's up, it's down, it's fast, slow. I mean, it's everything together. I really don't know how to answer that one.
I think that works. I think that works. Yeah.
Excellent.
I like that. Thank you.
Waves and roller coasters. And sometimes I imagine they go together. Like if you were on a water ride and hitting all of it at the same time.
Absolutely.
It's been an absolute delight, Michelle, to have you on the show with us. Where can people find out about your services?
We, as I said, are with the Area Agency on Aging. It's the Appalachian Area Agency on Aging, and we are housed in the Appalachian Council of Governments here in Greenville. We're located off of Pleasantburg on Century Circle. Our offices are currently closed right now because of COVID, but people can reach us by calling the office, and our office number is 864-242-9733. And when they call that number, they just need to tell the operator that they need to speak with a family caregiver advocate, and they'll get them back to myself or one of the other advocates here in the office, and we'll listen to them and see what we can do to help. And any other parts of the state, the other AAAs, like I said, there's 10 of us throughout the state. Every region has a AAA. That covers all of the counties in South Carolina. So all they need to do is they literally can go to the state office website and they can look it up and see which county they would fall under, or they're more than welcome to call here and I can point them in the right direction.
Wow. Thank you so much, Michelle. And Pam, you have just really taken a brave step. I know you said that you were an open book and this is not a problem, but just want to thank you personally from Holland and I, and just having you at the table and your courage to share your story. And I definitely know that it's going to impact many people. So thank you so much for sharing tonight. How can people get a hold of you?
You can go to allianceofrelativecaregivers.org. All of our phone numbers are on there. Also, pictures of our events where you can see some of our family members and some of the things that we do. Some of our testimonials are on there. We're also on Facebook. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. The office number is 818-789-1177. We'll take you any way you want to. And we answer everything. And you'll always get a live person.
Love it. Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much. And we just appreciate Michelle and Pam joining us at the Afterword table tonight. Please join us next week as we talk about human rights stories and how we share these ethically.
And I want to share a review from Apple Podcasts from one of our subscribers, Dev. Dev wrote, "Very engaging and thought-provoking. Listened to this podcast on a long drive and it made the time fly. Especially enjoyed the episodes on fathers." Thank you, Dev. Thanks for some great material. So if you would like to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, just share anything like what Dev or Deb or some of our other friends have shared. It does help us to keep the conversations going. And as always, remember that you are welcome at our table.